when humanity was forced into the stars. Not that their planet was destroyed, but the fact that the galactic community actually came knocking. They immediately jumped into space. But their ships were considered a joke, especially when it came to any type of combat, as the original ships that came up were more like Viking longboats compared to 21st century destroyers when you compare them to the other spacefaring species. This meant that they got taken advantage of for a long, long time. Humanity just took whatever jobs they could, whatever currency they could, and whatever tech they could. With this and human technology that was originally hidden from the public, they're now allowing themselves as a species to remove their constraints. They now have constant regeneration, which means mortality is not really an issue. Yet it seems, at least to some humans, morality also decided to take its leave. As human ships quickly evolve, becoming larger, faster, and insanely armed, the days of simply forcing human ships to allow boarding under the threat of destruction, well, that ended with a bang, and it ended with the Jody incident. A group of 4 Jody attempted to force themselves onto a human ship, forcing the human ship to submit to their rule. The ship, captained by a very old human that used to actually be part of their military maritime services, did not allow this. In a very quick skirmish, and at the end, the human vessel was in dire need of repairs, to be sure, but none of the Jody actually returned. The Jody actually faced repercussions for their actions that nobody ever wants, but it's always a possibility in space, as not only all 4 vessels were lost, but the crew were left to slowly drift, slowly perish in the void, as their life support systems had been completely destroyed along with their engines, which means they were on backup power, which means they had no ability to stay alive long enough for recovery. And only after this instant, only after the bodies were shown, and only after humanity had told everyone that this is the fate that awaits them if they screw around, if they fuck around, they're going to find out what happens when you deal with humans. All others began to look at humanity not as something weak, but closer to equals. And it's only after this instant that other species actually accept employment on human vessels. It is still rare to find a human vessel around because, unlike other species that number in the hundreds of billions, humanity, once it reached around 7 or 8 billion, seemed to stabilize. It was strange. They keep to themselves mostly, keeping most ships out of their own space. You need a special permit to enter. And even though they are quick to aid anyone who actually needs it, they are still very withdrawn and stay away from others. The only way to actually know a human is to join their crew. One would believe that a human would join their crews, but they don't do that. Not after finding out that it was always a trap to place them in some sort of bondage or serve them up as a meal. Many ships and personnel are actually now on the humans' list, a list they call shoot on sight, which has caused some incidences, but when it came down to the evidence, no one argued. Yet others tried to get employment on the human vessels as they actually pay very well compared to others, exceptionally well. Yet most of the strongest males never remain after one contract. They claim it's impossible to keep up or unsustainable work. This seemed like a challenge to any other species as they believed that they were stronger than any other human. There's no way a human could keep up. Sure, they're persistence predators, but there's no way that a whole crew would be completely drained of their life force at this point. Yet on any given space dock, whenever a human ships arrive, unloads its cargo and loads up some more, There are certain things that are constants. One is they never, ever transport slaves. If anyone attempts to, the cargo will be seized by the human, and no payment will be given on the other end. The only exception to this is a slave is spotted for what's known as termination in transit. In other words, they're going to be terminated and the body simply launched into the void, most likely into a star. It may be semi-common for a slave to be sold to humans, only to return with their own ship a decade or two later. It seemed as though the humans never gave up on these slaves. Or you might actually find a former slave that is no longer a servant, no longer tied to them, and is actually willingly working on the human vessels. This is strange because when they're sent off, they're usually weak, broken, missing parts, but now everything's been regenerated. Everything's been rejuvenated. They look fit, healthy, absolutely no reason for termination. Some look at it as some sort of human magic, and on occasion, a slave trader will try to purchase this one back. However, that has been shown to be a very bad idea, though there are the very, 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 very few occasions where this would happen. Most of those will be, as they say, blackballed from humanity. They will never be able to return home. Humans usually look at these traders and do some very bad things, breaking parts, removing parts, or completely eviscerating them, or the former slave will do it themselves. This is just one of the quirks when dealing with humans. Another constant is when males leave a human vessel, they look tired. So tired they can barely stand. Sure, they have a pocket full of credits, but they are completely drained. The look on their faces of what the hell did they have to do? They're not bruised. They're not broken. They're simply done, as though they haven't slept in weeks, as if no matter how much food they ate, they burned it all up. It's like they're walking corpses. Yet still with this, as well as humans pay, there is no question why a new crew will immediately be found and is accepted. They're always bouncing with anticipation, always ready for work, believing they can prove themselves. And then once they're in transit, they quickly discover that all human ships are almost completely fully automated. And they wonder, what is the work exactly? Well, the work is simple. They need to keep up with the captain in transit. In this case, if there's a female, she needs constant attention, and she is not just the captain, but the queen of that vessel, and she will be treated as one, as every single order must be followed without question. Some talk about this queen as once they are actually outside the atmosphere of a planet, it's though they suddenly get warm, and they suddenly hardly put any clothing on at all. This causes most species, regardless of reptilian, mammalian, amphibious, even insectoid, to sit there and stare as this will be the first time they've ever seen one in person, many times even politely asking, "May we get a closer look?" which they're never, ever denied. Their curiosity keeps them occupied, keeps them looking close for a while, and then, of course, the human will invite them to a meal. And this is when they find out way, way too late that humans have a myriad of chemicals to assist in creating a false rut in every single species. Everything must be adjusted, of course, but it is game on from there on out. Sometimes the pleasure is beyond reason, and these are the ones that never want to leave being a crew mate. Sometimes this, what should be pleasure, is a disgusting horror that will haunt their dreams forever. It will fuel their nightmares. And sometimes it's an almost carefree travel, except for the constant aiding the queen, running around having to do whatever she wants. And sometimes she will take a special interest in group team building activities that seem to never end for some. And they go on and on, my friend. It is the dance that never ends, and they realize, unlike human males, human females have endurance beyond complete reason. And this is why the human female captains are rather picky on who they actually allow on their ships. Yet every time it's something different. Maybe it's all one species. Maybe it's a mix of them, and you just see a rainbow of all these males coming on. It is also an open secret that for these human queens, it is impossible for them to be content with one male in transit. And as a running joke, everyone says this is why they're always welcoming the new arrivals by saying the same phrase: "It will be a pleasure to have you all as my new crew mates." Hello, everybody. This is Syntax. Thank you for joining me today, and I hope you got a chuckle out of this quick one-off story where I decided to subvert some expectations, as most HFY stories are done showing how men deal with being a ship's captain. I figured I'd shake it up a bit. Now, before I go, I need to say that today's winner is MTF Guard, with Julius Boone coming in a really close second. And I also need to send out some humongous thank yous to the supporters of this channel, and they are Prozac and Pancakes, SS Demon, MTF Guard, Erica Gem, Brian Kemp, Guardian Sage, and Julius Boone. Thank you all so much for supporting the channel. Everybody else, I'll see you on the next one. This is Syntax, punching out.